India will be closely monitoring Donald Trump's China visit for clues to any change in the U.S. policy towards the country. India would not like any U.S. move to give equal status to China, which former President Obama had proposed with the G2 formula in 2005. It would have given China a dominant say in South Asia, but India protested. Obama's advisors then stepped in and the G2 formula was quietly dropped. The question is whether Donald Trump will go along with President Xi Jinping's quest for greater power status equal to the U.S. Donald Trump is seen as unpredictable, and if China gives him the business deals he is looking for, including billions of dollars in investment that creates American jobs, there is no telling which way Donald Trump could swing. It is well known that Donald Trump's family, especially son-in-law Jared Kushner, has business ties in China. It is also well known that Yang Jiechi, Chinese representative for border talks with India, was recently elevated to the Politburo Standing Committee. His promotion is seen as reward for the role he played in ensuring the Donald Trump visit. His ties to Kushner are also well known. India will also be concerned over any reference to India or South Asia during or after the Donald Trump visit. In that sense, any references to Afghanistan which are contrary to the understanding India and the US have would be a setback. India would also prefer the US not back away from its criticism over China's Belt and Road Initiative. India will also take comfort from references to the Indo-Pacific deal made by Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when Donald Trump was there earlier this week. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson also underscored that point a number of times during his visit to Delhi last month. Let's go straight across now to WION senior editor Surya Gangadharan joining us from the newsroom for more on this to break down these developments. Surya, a lot at stake for India. What's India hoping for during the third leg of Donald Trump's Asia visit as he lands in Beijing?
I think some of the points that you have already underscored, these are some of India's concerns ahead of the Trump dialogue with Xi Jinping. The whole question here is, the whole issue frankly is Trump's unpredictability. Although there's a fair amount of coherent references that have been made to India, right from Defense Secretary Mattis to the National Security Advisor McMaster and more recently Rex Tillerson. The unpredictability about Trump is the fact that he may not go along with what has been enunciated by his advisors, and these are his closest advisors in Washington. So in that sense, it'll be interesting to watch how Trump exactly plays out, how the Trump-Xi Jinping bonhomie plays out in Beijing over the course of the next 2 days.
Right, the issues of the South China Sea and also the growing North Korean, over the rhetoric when it comes to the North Korean aggression, Surya. What Xi, of course, does not want is that U.S. President Donald Trump presses him for sanctions that won't serve China's interests. Also, Beijing has warned the U.S. to not bring up the South China Sea when Donald Trump visits there. It will be a win for Xi if Donald Trump does not, isn't it?
The whole point here is that perhaps President Trump's pressure on the Chinese to do more vis-a-vis North Korea may be intended more as kind of leverage, to keep the pressure on the Chinese, to give them the impression that there could be penalties in the event the Chinese are not able to fulfill those kind of things that the U.S. wants. So there is a fair amount of commentary even within the U.S. that some of the demands Trump has placed on the Chinese may not be fair. But that's all part of gamesmanship, it's part of diplomacy, and we really have to wait and see what Trump is willing to accept from the Chinese, which is something that Xi Jinping has to think through.
And also putting things in perspective for our viewers, Surya, this is a rather emboldened Xi after the recent Communist Party meeting, who is meeting a rather troubled Donald Trump.
Well, there is a sense that when you compare Xi and Trump, Xi seems much more powerful given the fact that he's come out of the 19th Party Congress, he's been anointed China's most powerful leader after Chairman Mao. His thoughts are there in the party constitution, they'll be enshrined next year in March. So in that sense, he presides over a country which is seen as resurgent. Now, China has economic issues, but they are seen as resurgent because of their huge trillion-dollar reserves. But when you look at President Trump, he's mired in scandal over the Russian meddling in the US elections. His administration is seen as incoherent, and given the fact that his intemperate remarks on a range of issues, including foreign policy and domestic issues, he comes off as perhaps at a disadvantage vis-a-vis Xi Jinping.